Hey, this is Tiger again with another stream in the Train Sim World 2 universe. What will soon be the Train Sim World 3 universe, most probably. But for a couple of weeks we still have the opportunity to play Train Sim World 2 without being vintage. We will see what we can do in September with the new version of the Train Sim World franchise, and I'm quite positive that a lot of the things that we talk about in those streams here can be just as well used in the new game as soon as it is released. Today actually I thought we run a service in the Nahverkehr Dresden DLC, this one. At service with the Talent 2 train, the Baureihe 442 in German, and I think this service is a nice service to look at two things. The first thing is punktuelle Zugbeeinflussung, PZB, and how it works. On this particular service we have a lot of opportunities to look at different constellations in which the regulations for the PZB safety systems need to be executed, and at the same time we can have a look at the Tempomat in the Talent 2, which is quite a decent tool, I think. Most of the modern trains have cruise controls installed. Can be AFB in the ICE trains, or it can be a Tempomat in the Talent 2. The difference is not so big often, especially contrary to current beliefs. The Tempomat in the Talent 2 can slow down the train properly. It is not only for accelerating or keeping the velocity, it can actually slow it down quite nicely, and you can perform a smooth stop at the stations when you use the Tempomat, and we will have a look at this. So the idea is actually to spawn on foot again, to catch a service that runs from Dresden to Riesa, and then on, but not in our DLC, to Leipzig Hauptbahnhof. I just leave the settings for August and clear, and I want to spawn in Dresden at 10:10. That should give us enough opportunity to capture our train. Set it up and talk a bit about how PZB punktuelle Zugbeeinflussung works. It is a safety system that a lot of players find quite difficult to get used to, but in my opinion, if you look at it properly, it is not so difficult. And then it needs some training to get used to it, and then it needs some focus to actually execute it when you're running the train. And we will see how I will be able to keep up my concentration. And if I fail, then at least we can see what the PZB unit will do with our train. Most probably it will apply a penalty brake and stop our train, and then we have the opportunity to see what we can do to recover the train and go on with our service. So this is our train, a Bombardier Talent 2 train, maximum velocity 160 kilometers per hour. We are going in double traction, meaning we have two trains. In this case, two trains of the 3-car variety. There are 4 and 5 car varieties of this specific trains, and we will have the 3-car variety here. So we will but tag our train so that nobody else can steal it, especially not some artificial intelligence driver. And then let's have a look at what we have here. So this is our cockpit. What we need to do is to set the master key to on so that the train is actually listening to us. What is not necessarily so important, but I always like to switch the displays to dark mode because it is less obtrusive. Then we have to check if our passenger information system is set up correctly, what it is not the case. Yeah, it's really a pretty little train. It says nicht einsteigen, do not enter, but actually we want people to enter and we want them to come with us to Leipzig, and this is what we put up, and we can check in the external view if it worked, and it looks good. Leipzig. The marker lights are already set up correctly. This is the switch for the lights. Unfortunately it does not work properly because you can activate the headlights only in the high beam mode, not in the reduced or normal mode, but since we're running during the day, this is not supposed to bug us. If you want your passengers to have some lighting, you can leave the train lights on. This is this switch. If you want to save some energy, you can turn them off while we are running during the day. And we won't have our reading lights and our cab lights either. We will have the lights off. Sender we do not need. To turn the security systems off, we have to go to this bar here. We want to activate the SIFA. We want to activate the PZB, obviously. We have two switches for that. Those switches are not really actually the switches that you would use in real life to turn the PZB on. This is not the PZB main switch. The PZB main switch is somewhere else on this train and is not implemented in the simulator. These two switches actually in real life would deactivate some functionality of the PZB system, like it would render PZB incapable to apply penalty brakes here, PZB Überbrückung Bremse, or it would, well, render it incapable of doing anything with a Störschalter. Actually, those two switches are meant in case you have a problem with your PZB, it is malfunctioning, so you can actually render it inactive without turning it off completely. Then you will go into a... Oh, we're already starting, so we have to open the doors. You can, when you capture a train like this, open the doors before and have it standing there, then this load passengers procedure will start, but actually, as I found out, passengers will not board the train, so it is recommended to not open the doors before the boarding time has actually reached. Since we have, this is the key that I wanted, since we have turned on the PZB systems, now our MFD, our display, tells us that the PZB is on, is active. This is this PZB on blue button, and that we are running on the upper version of the PZB. That's the 85 that is shown here. I will call for a short break to look at how PZB actually works and what we are supposed to do, and that you actually understand better, if you don't know it already, what we are doing with our safety systems during this trip. I prepared a little PowerPoint presentation, and if I actually manage to get it running, then we can look at it together. Yeah, it looks good, I think. We will take care of the ghost girls later then, that are on the train. Maybe you can check where she's getting off the train, and then we know what was her idea. So, We maybe know that there are 3 different classes of PZB regimes: upper, middle and lower, in German obere, mittlere and untere. That's why the letters O, M and U. And the first thing that the PZB class tells you is how fast you can go if there is no other limit to your velocity, and that is with PZB O, the upper class 160. What is the limit for all trains that are not guided by LZB, linienförmige Zugbeeinflussung, in Germany? Every passenger train is PZB O, so we won't look at the PZB M and U classes. If you are wondering why there are more than one class, it is to represent that heavier trains, especially freight trains, can slow down not as fast and powerful as passenger trains, and so they have different velocities in their PZB regime. But we will look at this in a different stream. So what is the idea about PZB? The idea is that you have a main signal that tells you that you have to reduce your speed. It can look like this, a permanent speed signal. It can be connected with a signal telling you that in the next interlocking part you have to slow down. It can look like this in the classic HP-VR system, or it can look like this in the HL signal system in the German Democratic Republic. All of that tells you that from this point on, as soon as the tip of your train is passing these signals, you have to be at this speed. And this is called target speed here in my sheet. And since the problem with the train often is that you cannot slow down your train within seconds, like you can slow down or bring to a stop your car, you get a warning with a distance signal. It can look like this. This yellow signal is warning you that there will be a permanent speed reduction. And also here, those signals with the yellow auxiliary signals flashing green typically warn you that there will be a speed reduction of that kind upcoming. Those are the classic 4-signal warnings. This is the HL equivalent. All those signs have in common that there is yellow in it. Yellow means caution, there is a speed reduction upcoming or incoming or coming up. And the idea about PZB is that at this point, when your train passes this distance signal, this warning, you get an impulse from a magnet that is in the track, and the train knows, whoops, there is a speed reduction incoming. The train, or the PZB system on the train, does not know what kind of speed reduction it is at this point. It just gets one impulse, a 1000 Hertz impulse, and it knows there is anything coming up. And the train driver needs to do and to react. The easiest thing that he has to react to is that he has to bring down the speed to target speed from the speed that he is traveling to the target speed. And with speed reductions of 10, what means 100 in Germany, all the numbers displayed on signals concerning speeds mean that you always have to multiply it by 10 or add a 0 at the end. So if there is a 6, it means 60. If there is a 10, it means 100 kilometers per hour. And if the warning is about an upcoming or incoming speed reduction of 100 or 110, 120 and so on, you don't have to do anything but to bring down your speed until you hit the signal to the advertised speed. If the reduction is to a lower speed, then you actually have to do something, otherwise the PZB system will stop your train. Let's first look at announced reductions to 10 kilometers to 70 kilometers per hour. What you have to do as soon as the train gets the impulse warning there is a speed reduction incoming, you have to hit a key, a vigilance key, Wachsamkeitstaste in Germany. That's why it is called WT in the sheet here, and you have 2.5 seconds to do this. Otherwise, the train sees, oops, my driver missed the caution signal. I will better bring the train to a stop and will apply a penalty brake. So, with those speeds, announced speeds, always like warning an incoming of 10 kilometers or 70 to 70, you always have to hit the vigilance key, and then this lamp will go on, the 1000 Hertz yellow lamp, and then you have time, 23 seconds, starting with the moment that your train hits the 1000 Hertz magnet, to bring down your speed to 80 in PZB O. If you're checking all this in sources, you will find that the actual limit here is 85, what is correct. If the train is not below 85 after 23 seconds, then the PZB system will apply a penalty brake. I wrote 80 because the rules of operation issued by the German railway enterprises, they require their drivers to stay always 5 kilometers per hour below the limits, so that there is actually a margin of error. So if the sources say go down below 85, then you have to read it like go down below 80 max. And this is why our train shows us an 85 and not an 80, to indicate that it is on a PZB O mode. Nonetheless, I put the speeds in this sheet that are actually required by the rules of operation. Okay, this is all you have to do. You have to hit your vigilance key so that the train knows, okay, my driver saw the caution, he is aware of it, and then you have to apply brakes or get the speed down to 80 at first, and then you can relax and bring the speed down to the target speed until you hit the main signal. With 80 and 90 kilometers per hour, if they are announced, it is more or less the same. You have to do exactly the same, hit the vigilance key within those 2.5 seconds. On modern train, on oldish trains you have 4 seconds, but this is not that interesting. But only if at the point that you are getting this impulse, when you're hitting this 1000 Hertz magnet, if you are traveling with a speed of 15 kilometers per hour above the announced speed. So if it is 80, if you are traveling 95 or above, and if it is 90, if you are traveling 105 kilometers per hour or above, then you have to do it. If you're actually slower than that, you don't have to do that, because if just imagine you're traveling with 80 line speed, you see a sign with an 8 announcing a reduction to 80, you think, okay, yeah, I'm traveling 80, I have to slow down to 80. Why would I have to hit the vigilance key or whatever? Why would I have to do anything? You don't, because you just stay on the track. Unlike if you're traveling with 70 and 70 is announced, you have to hit the Wachsamkeitstaste. You don't need to slow down because you're already below 70. But imagine you're traveling with 90 kilometers per hour. If it would be just like this, you would have to hit the vigilance key, slow down to 80, and then accelerate to 90 after the monitoring ended. That does not make a lot of sense. So if you're traveling with 90, you don't have to do anything in this case. But this is only applicable to 80 and 90 speed limit reductions. The next thing, there is a speed reduction to 0, what obviously means you have to stop. There is a red signal at the end. At this point, you don't have to pass the signal at all. You have to be at a velocity of 0 here. So the signals look a bit different than those. It is the classical yellow that tells you the next signal is red. You have to stop at the next signal. What requires PZB is first totally the same. Vigilance key, the 1000 Hertz monitoring will start. You have 23 seconds to go down to 60, but then to 80. But this is not the end of the story at this point, because when you hit the red signal with 80, you will probably not be able to stop. So you have to keep on reducing your speed. First to 60 before you hit another magnet, the 500 Hertz magnet, or in a distance of about 200-300 meters in front of the red signal. This gives the train another impulse, and at the time that the train gets this 500 Hertz impulse, it needs to be slowed down to 60, and then you have 153 meters to bring down your speed to 40. If you fail to do that, if you fail to get to the 80s here, if you fail to go down to 60 or lower with the 500 Hertz, or if you don't get your train to the 40 within the 153 meters after getting the 500 Hertz impulse, the train will apply a penalty brake and stop you, so that nothing worse actually happens. Yeah, that's it. That's actually everything you need to know in basics about PZB. There are other things like releasing from the PZB monitoring. What is like you are in this 1000 Hertz monitoring, and then the signal actually that required you to slow down changes and turns to proceed green clear. Then there is no point to go on with that stuff, and under certain circumstances you can just hit the release key, the Freitaste, and then you are free again to go back to line speed. We will see that when we run our train. And then there is a thing like restricted monitoring, where those speeds are halved in the PZB O universe, but we will see that as soon as we encounter it in running the service. Okay, so back to our train. Passengers half boarded, we can close the doors. Anything else to set up on the train? We have to set the reverser to vorwärts. Brakes are already released here. You can see it here that there is still some pressure that will go away as soon as we apply a minimum of power, and then the train can start. What you can see here is that we have a start program in our PZB computer. When the train starts, the PZB computer does not know what happens, so it will activate a restricted monitoring. Restricted, I said, it will be half the normal value, 85 to 45, and we are not allowed to go over this limit, otherwise the train will stop us. But since we've seen a green signal, we are allowed to press the release key and go out of this restriction. So we are actually allowed to go to the 50 that was announced on the signal. We are warned about a reduction to 60, what does not bug us a lot because we are not traveling 60, we are traveling with maximum 50 kilometers. The white dots on those signals tell us that they are repeaters anyway, so I'm not quite sure if this signaling is totally correct, so I won't say a lot about that in a different stream maybe. What I accept is the 60 limit that the last signal told us, and we are approaching the next. Yeah, the penalty brake will just bring your train to a complete stop. There is some sound of a horn going off, and a lot of lights are lighting up, and then the train will grind to a stop, and then you have to wait a bit and reset your train before you can go on. And very important, you have to call your dispatcher and say, I'm sorry, I had a penalty brake. Tell me what I am supposed to do. Because in most cases there is a reason that the train applies a penalty brake, because probably you ran a red signal or you did not react to any other thing that required you to slow down or do something. So we are already closing in to Dresden Mitte. I will use the talented Tempomat to get our train down to a speed of 40, what is I think an adequate speed to run next to the platform. I will explain it a bit more later on, but at the moment I will just use the Tempomat to slow down the train gradually and try to hit the perfect stop position as close as possible, so that the passengers will have a nice almost a nice and cozy stop. Maybe I will run into a penalty break later on anyway, because I'm not paying attention on what I am doing. Maybe we can have a penalty break application purposely or on purpose, so that you can see what happens there. Now the passengers have boarded, I can close my doors again. Still almost. And then we can start again. Hey people, stay below, be behind the white line. It's dangerous when the train is on the move. Alright. When accelerating, I will not apply more than 80% of my traction force. Usually when you're running in snowy conditions, even less is adequate. We are in a limit of 80 now. I will always go to close to the limit, then reduce the force, and then when the speed is almost reached, I activate the talented Tempomat, and then the Tempomat gets us to the target speed like 80, and then I can reduce the power to minimum and leave it to the Tempomat. Next stop will be very soon. Since it is a very long platform, I start reducing the speed earlier than I usually would, so that I am not faster than 40 kilometers when we reach the platform. When planning how to stop your train at the platform, you more or less have to have some sort of a brake curve in your mind, and try to hit, that was the CIFA, and try to hit certain milestones. Like I always try to go down to 15 at 50 meters left, to 10 at 30 meters left, and then I take over with the manual braking control. And this is a 500 point stop. Open the doors. When you're standing at the station, doors open, I think it is best practice to apply the brakes to a max, so that the train will not start rolling as long as passengers can board or debark the train, so that nothing bad happens there. If you want to okay. Yeah. We cannot have the camera in a spot where you can see the people on the whole length of the train. As soon as the door's closed, and you still have to wait a bit, you can bring the brakes down to a minimum, and as soon as you are allowed to clear, you start rolling again. Before you apply more than 5% power, what releases the brakes, I usually wait until the brake pressure has dropped in the brake cylinders, dropped below 1 bar, and then you can totally start accelerating. We are still in the 80 limit, but there is a descent upcoming, so it is always advisable to stay like 5 kilometers per hour below the limit, so that your talented Tempomat does not bring you by mistake over speed limit, because when running downhill, cruise control systems tend to do that. Now we're down, we can actually accelerate to the 80. That the Tempomat is active, you can see on this blue dot on my speed clock here. Now there is a 100 speed limit. Still have to wait until the whole train has passed. And then there is a 160 upcoming, so we can really go high speed here. And you can see when I'm increasing the speed on the Tempomat how this blue dot is climbing on the speed clock, and this is the target speed for the Tempomat, and it applies power by itself automatically, even if I've got my power lever to minimum. So we will really accelerate to the maximum speed that is allowed, that we can go without Hl9b. And from running this service before, I know that the next reduction in speed limit will be to 50, what is really a big dive. And so we have to be very to watch out for blinking greens. Like, I think it is incoming now. Yeah, you can see it blinking probably, and this is too much for the Tempomat to reduce the speed. The Tempomat will always brake with 50% only. Now we passed the yellow signal, I hit the Wachsamkeitstaste. We have 23 seconds to reduce the speed below 85 to hit 80 to avoid a Zwangsbremsung. And now we are 85, good. Now we can actually release the brakes a bit and use the rest of the track that is left until we hit the definite, the white 5, to bring the speed down to 50. Like here. Here you can see the white 5. We don't have to hit any keys now, we just need to be there. And why did the signals bring us down to 50 here now? We will see that very soon. We have to go over a switch that has a speed limit of 50. This switch here. And this is why the signals slowed us down to the speed that we are required to keep on the switch. If you look at it in the speed meter here, we are going with, that is the red line, a 160 track limit, and then all of a sudden we have to slow down to 50 on the switch. Obviously the train can't do that. So the signals slow us down to 50 a bit before they give us the yellow warning so that we can adapt. The PZB brings us down to 80 in the meantime, then to 50, and then we are on a straight 50, go through the bottleneck. And this is actually what the speed signaling does quite often. It funnels us into bottlenecks, into speed bottlenecks like this switch with a 50. Hl9b is the linienförmige Zugbeeinflussung, what is a different sort of train control mechanism, more advanced, and contrary to the PZB, where we only get impulses on 3 different points on the track. With the Hl9b we have a data cable in the track that constantly gives us information about the status of the signals ahead, 10 kilometers ahead actually. And this is much more secure, and we can go on speeds higher than 160. like the ICE that travels 250 or 330 even, it needs constantly data about what happens on the next 10 kilometers of track, because if it wants to slow down or come to a stop when running 330, it needs several kilometers to do that. So this data cable will give you information about if the track is clear in front of you or not. .500 stop again and let people out. So that was the first application of PZB. We saw the yellow 5. We had to hit the Wachsamkeitstaste, go down to 80 first and then to the target speed. You can always initiate the door closing sequence a couple of seconds before the yellow circle is actually completed, so you are faster in leaving if you are a bit late. So the new track limit here on this side of the track is 120. More often than not, you have on this 4-track layout a pair of tracks that is for the slow trains like S-Bahn or Regionalbahn, and a pair of tracks that is for the high speed like the Intercity or ICEs. Again, how to use the talented Tempomat. I apply power just until we are almost at our target speed of 120, like until the needle climbed to 150. And then, so that I do not overshoot the mark, like now the needle is at 150, I go down with my power and then I activate either like this, or I wait until the needle climbs 2 kilometers per hour more and activate the Tempomat, and then it will keep us on the 120 kilometers straight away. Those people should stay on the other side of the white line. It is so dangerous when they are walking around there, when we are passing with 120. Okay, eyes on the track in case there are any yellow signals or signals that require us to slow down. For the next slowing down, I will just use the Tempomat and reduce the target speed, and then the Tempomat will actually brake automatically the train, always applying a constant 50% of brake force, what is a reasonable brake force, and one that you can also apply in snowy conditions without the risk of derailing. With this train, in snowy conditions, do not apply brakes more than 70%, otherwise you will most probably derail. So if you're running the service in snowy conditions and have to slow down from the 160 to the 50, don't apply more than 70%. 65% works if you start slowing down as soon as you see the flashing green. Now we are coming to a flashing yellow. That is a HL signal telling us that we have to anticipate a reduction in speed limit to 40 or 60. I know that it is 60 because I know our Fahrplan. Again, Wachsamkeitstaste, go down to 80 first, then we can roll with the 80. We don't get a penalty brake application. See the ICE on the left side overtaking us on the fast track. And then the signal is in this band This is the definite signal. These HL signals, they have on the lower part the definite part, and on the upper part they tell you what is upcoming. So this signal tells you it's 60, that is yellow with the yellow bar, 60 now and the blinking yellow on top, and slow later, 60 or 40 upcoming. Don't forget to press the Wachsamkeitstaste, the vigilance key again here, because it is another 1000 Hertz monitoring here. So the next signal we have to expect is on the bottom side, yellow with a yellow bar telling us to go 60. This red thingy is not a red signal, it is a W. If you are a shunting service, not a passenger line service, but a shunting service, you have to actually contact the dispatcher and ask if you can pass this signal. But we don't have to do that because we are a train service. So another switch that we have to go, and then we will get to another HL signal. On the bottom it tells us 60 now, and on top we have not a flashing but a steady yellow, and a steady yellow, as always, is expect a red signal on the next signal, so prepare to stop. Again, we have to hit the vigilance key, and I have to bring down the speed because we are closing in on the stop anyway. Without the stop we would have to go to 60 to anticipate the 5000 Hertz. This yellow thing is just a repeater. Now you can see on the bottom that we have the 500 Hertz application. And I was a bit late on the brakes because I wanted to see the 500, show the 500 Hertz application here. See? And from here on, because we are going on to a red signal, what has just turned to yellow while we are waiting here, we are under a 500 Hertz monitoring now. Since we stopped what we are supposed to do, because we have to unload and load passengers, we dropped into the restricted mode. We are no longer restricted to 40 like usual with the 500 Hertz, but to 25 now, even though the signal turned to green. The thing with the PZB is the train does not know what signals are doing, so the train does not know if this signal is red or yellow or green, and it treats it as red because that is all that the train knows, because it got the 500 Hertz impulse. So we will have to go very slowly to this signal, not more than 20, otherwise we will get a penalty brake, because the train still thinks this signal is red, what is the guy doing? As soon as we pass the signal, we are back to the 1000 Hertz monitoring, still restricted, but we can go to 40 now. And then, after a while, when the yellow 1000 Hertz lamp goes off, I think it should be possible to release us from the monitoring, but the game does not allow that. Now the 1000 Hertz lamp came off. I tried to release because we have a green signal, what usually allows us to release, but the train does not release. I think this is irregularity. This should be different. So we have to wait until the monitoring ends. What is true about this is that you cannot release from a 500 Hertz monitoring, but the 500 Hertz monitoring stopped as soon as we passed the signal that was red. So we used to be in a 1000 Hertz monitoring. So I think correctly we should be able to release from that, but now it ended anyway, we can speed up. But we have to be careful with accelerating, because the next signal is yellow again. Yellow tells us the signal after that probably being red. What do we have to do? We have to press... No, it just turned green. That is nice. So we can just accelerate without doing anything. Line speed is 120. Maybe someone noticed the 12 on the speed board on the right side. Since we did not have any monitoring active and the signal turned to green before we passed it, there was no action required. And I just used the talented Tempomat to get us back to 120. What it does reliably, if you're not running downhill, if it is not on very low speeds, you can just pump up the Tempomat and it will be perfect. Again, for the next stop I will use the Tempomat to bring the train to a soft stop. Always have a look on the counter on the top left telling you when to stop. Like now. When it hits 1.2 kilometers and we are traveling 120. I just reduced the Tempomat target speed to 80 to see what happens. As soon as we are at 600 meters, I reduce it to 60. You can see a yellow signal coming up. That requires, as you all know, the Wachsamkeitstaste. Drop to 80, not a problem here because we have to stop anyway. To 40 Bahnsteigsgeschwindigkeit, platform speed at 150 meters, target speed to 20. At 50 to 15, at 30 to 10, and then starting at 20 meters on the clock with the manual brake to get it as close as possible to the spot. Well, still a bit behind, but that is not so bad. We are a bit behind the schedule, but always, well, almost always happens if you get reds or yellows. Also, what happened, you know that already, because we stopped while being under 1000 Hertz monitoring from the yellow signal, we dropped into restricted mode again. That's why we are restricted to 40, not to 80. What we have to keep in mind when we start our train now. So that we do not speed. The other thing is, since we have a signal that turned to green again, we have to adhere to the monitoring as long as the lamp with 1000 Hertz, the yellow lamp with 1000 Hertz is on. But as soon as it goes off, we can liberate, we can release from the monitoring, because we have better signals than the train thinks we have. So the first thing is stick to the 40 and have a close eye. But then, all of a sudden we see that the next signal is yellow. And we are in 1000 Hertz control. But you can see that the 85 is still blinking. I could release now, but as soon as we hit the yellow, the 45 limit will be on again. This is why the operating rules, they prohibit release in a situation like this, when you have to anticipate the next 1000 Hertz monitoring. Like this. 1000 Hertz lamp came on again, and unfortunately this yellow signal push this back into the restricted 1000 Hertz, so we have to keep to the 45 and have to wait until it runs out, until we can accelerate. Now the restricted part ended, we are back to 85 as you can see, but we are still that beeping is just the CIFA, if I'm too slow to acknowledge the CIFA. Well, now the next stop is incoming. So we have to slow down anyway. So you can see, if you always get adverse signals, reds, yellows, you are constantly busy satisfying your PZB computer and you have no chance to get back to line speed. And this is one of the many ways that you can accumulate a delay. Next signal is clear, what is nice. Well, first we have to stop. Yes. Please mind the gap. That's what he said. In German it is a longer sentence. Please mind the gap. Bitte achten Sie auf den Abstand zwischen Zug und Bahnsteigkante. Since we are a bit late, I will activate the door closing sequence early. Releasing the brakes a bit early. Just checking that the signal is still green. Yeah, it's still green. We don't have to bother. Our monitoring with the PZB ended, so we can actually go to line speed. And since the track is clear, since the track is dry, there is no snow, there is no rain, there's no nothing, you can actually apply full power. I'm not completely sure that you are supposed to apply 100%. There is sometimes you can find things like only apply like 95% to keep the wear and tear to a minimum. In the simulator, obviously, this does not make a difference. Okay, closing in to the 120. At 115, I pump down the speed a bit, the force. As soon as the needle is very close to the 120, I activate the Tempomat, and it snaps to the 120, almost by itself. Then I can reduce my power to the minimum and just let the Tempomat do the tedious work of keeping the train to the track speed. We have 7.1 kilometers to Priestewitz. We can actually use this time to have a look at the scenery. Just make sure that when you have a look at the scenery, don't forget to activate your CIFA key. Especially if you're running without the HUD, you don't see it coming on, but you will hear the sound, and then be prepared to press your acknowledge for the CIFA. What is nice in this representation of the Talent 2 is that you can see on this screen how much traction force the train is actually applying in kilonewton. I think that is. forgot to activate the service indicator. Well, it's better late than never. We passed the field with the cows. I'm always on the lookout if I can hear them mooing, but I've never heard them mooing. In case you ever wondered what the difference is, how you can spot the difference between a distance signal and a main signal, the best way to distinguish them is that distant signals have distant signals board, distant signal boards. Like this is a main signal, it has this orange and white on top and bottom sign that says this signal is a main signal. If at the same time it has a triangle, a yellow triangle pointing to the bottom, it tells you that it is a main signal and at the same time a distance signal. And signals that are only distant signals, they have a sign with a black cross on them. We will most probably see one soon. And we're closing into Priestewitz. Yeah. Distance signals are always announced with these striped signs, 3 stripes, 2 stripes, 1 stripe, and then the distance signal. And here you can see the black X on the distance signal board, telling you that this signal is a distance signal and a distance signal only. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe you can tell me when the stream is back on for you. Good. Again, same sequence, reduction from 80 to 60, and then from 60 to 40 as soon as I hit the 400. And this makes a very easy stop here. But now be wary, you can see that there is a yellow signal at the end of the platform, and when we stand at the platform, we will most probably not be able to see it from the cab. So don't forget that there is a yellow signal, otherwise you will forget to hit the vigilance key when you start after this stop. So here we can see it. We stop one meter early so that we do not lose this signal out of our view. Good to hear that you're back. What do you do if you cannot see the signal from the cab? You can use the head out of the window, then you most probably can see it. Doors closing. Release the brakes, apply power, and now not forget to hit the vigilance key. Here you might want to press it a bit more because you're not actually sure when you when you pass the magnet, just hit the vigilance key a couple of times. What do we do when we're accelerating in a yellow light? We just accelerate it to 60 because that is the speed that we have to keep in case we get a 500 Hertz. Obviously, if you see the red signal before that, we don't accelerate to 60, but in case you don't know what the signal does, we just go to 60 and then we are safe. As soon as we get the red 500 Hertz monitoring, then we slow down even more. But as far as I can see, our signal is green. So we can, what we've learned, release, because we see a clear aspect. There is no monitoring. We release it and can accelerate to line speed. Again, quite a distance between here and the next stop, and the talented Tempomat will just do the work and keep us on track speed 120. Obviously we still have to watch out. Sometimes we get adverse signals and we have to react to them. But this signal is green. You can see the striped signs telling you there is a distant signal incoming, and this signal has this X board again, and it is green, telling you the next main signal will be green as well. That was the CIFA. Never forget the CIFA, because if you ignore the CIFA for too long, you will get a penalty brake. But a different kind of a penalty brake than with the PZB. Here we see a 13, what means track limit to 130, but be cautious, wait a bit, because we are running, as you can see, for a very short while on this track here. And as you can see, this track has a limit of 120, so there is a short part of track that will, well, dock us to running over speed limit if we already accelerated because of the 130 sign. We just have to wait until the train is clear of this bottleneck, and then we can accelerate to 130. I think this is not intentional, this is something that happens when building these routes. Now there is a 120 warning sign, and as we've seen in the beginning of the stream, there is no need actually to do anything but to prepare to slow down to 120. And from my track knowledge, I know that it will be at the next signal that I see now. I see it is yellow. Ouch. I even have to slow down to 80 after hitting the vigilance key, because it is a yellow again. First to the 80, and then, since we have to prepare for a 500 Hertz monitoring, we go down to 60 in one go, so that we actually hit the active 500 Hertz magnet and get the 500 Hertz monitoring. We don't get a penalty brake.
So, if I see it correctly, the next signal is already red. It's actually red still. So we have to slow down even more. But now it turned to green. And what can we do? We can release and accelerate to line speed. The train that is coming from the opposite direction is most probably the reason why the signal was put to red. But now that the train has passed and cleared our part of the track, signal was sent back to green and we can proceed. As a rule, it is always better to slow down the train and roll slowly towards the red signal instead of stopping in front of it, because it is always less of a bother to accelerate a slow rolling train than to start a train that has come to a standstill. The problem what I have now is that I forgot to bring down my speed for the next stop. So I turned off the talented Tempomat and went to manual braking, what is obviously harder than the 50% that the talented Tempomat does. Careful in snowy conditions, but in conditions like this, clear conditions, you can totally do it without jumping off the rails. Maybe the passengers fell off their chairs. Well, hey. Happens. So this is, if I am not mistaken, the second but last stop. Remaining one more stop and then we are already at the terminus. Especially with this last hard braking, we actually got back on time. Almost at least. Next stop is Glaubitz, 2.3 kilometers. Again, using manual acceleration to get the train close to the target speed. As soon as we reach the target speed, I can actually start braking the train again. Okay. Unfortunately, I turned it off, so I have to do this manually. Well, on the other hand, you can always switch back to the Tempomat, let the Tempomat do it. For these two stations you totally can feel that you're running downhill, so you need more distance for your brake, for slowing down the train. Yes. And we are actually back on our schedule. Next up is already Riesa terminus. We even have to wait a bit until we are allowed to leave this station. In good weather you can keep the train doors open 10 seconds before you want to leave. Initiate the closing sequence. Get the brakes to minimum. Wait for the beep. Release the brakes. Apply some power. Check that nobody gets caught in the leaving train, and then there are huge amounts of people on this platform. Looks like they are on an excursion or something like that. Are you back with me, AJ, by the way? Ah, good. Great. So, last time that we are accelerating to line speed 120. ICE is coming again as us. Well, obviously not against us, but from the other side. Hugged to the 120, handed it to the talented Tempomat. Next thing I want to show you is a special version of the distance signal board. This board with the black X on it. It's the only instance of that sign that I've seen in the game so far. If you look at this yellow signal for the other side, you can see that there is the X and it has a circle in its middle. So what does this mean? It is German Democratic Republic version of distant signal with a yellow light with a white light on the top left, indicating that the distance to the next main signal is shorter than it usually is. So, in case you are interested in an anomaly like this. Next thing I want to show you is that thing with an 80 reduction. And for this I am reducing my speed to 90, and you will see that we will pass a sign that advertises or announces a reduction to 80. You can't see very well because it is almost hidden by one of those distance boards, but now it is coming in here. You can see it's 80. That is for us, and usually you would have to hit the vigilance key, but you don't, because our speed is not more than 15 kilometers above. So I'm not doing anything, I'm not getting a penalty break. This is the other thing that I tried to tell you about in the beginning of this stream. But now we are approaching a yellow, so we have to slow down anyway.
Don't forget to hit your vigilance key. And since we are coming in on a yellow, I just dropped to 60, so that I am prepared for the 500 Hertz. This is another sign that is a bit hidden. The 80 that was announced, obviously of no importance since we are slower than that anyway. And now that we are going into the station, I'm going to 40 platform speed, even before we hit the 500 Hertz. This is in repeater. If you ask me, how can you see that it is in repeater? Because it has this yellow, this white dot. Again, comes from the same factory as the distant signal sign with the white circle on the X. Replaces the white lamp that is usually below the signal aspect. Yeah. Okay, the service concludes with a 500 point stop. We have our passengers leave. On the last stop they always leave quite fast. We just have to lock the doors again. And that is the service, with a lot of PZB action. And this is how we did. I don't think we went over speed limit. The beginning we were actually quite fast, and there was this part where we were delayed by the PZB signals. And in the end we recovered. Stopping distances, well, that is not so... Yeah, a lot of zeros and ones. Can't live with that. Okay, that was that. PZB O for passenger trains and the Tempomat in the Talent 2, Baureihe 442. A train that is very nice to drive, and I think this service was a good service to show you what happens with the PZB. Okay, this girl takes my train. I want to get off the train, close the door again, and here our train goes. Has to keep to 60 and then it can go back to track limit. Signal turns to red as soon as the train passed, what is totally what it is supposed to do. That's it for today. Baby Bullet in the next stream. Yes, on Thursday evening we go to San Francisco, Caltrain, and we are riding the Baby Bullet. Okay, the train now activated. It's CFA horn because the girl who took the train does not know that she has to kick the CFA pedal every now and then. I'm sorry for that sound. I cannot switch it off because I'm far away from from the CFA pedal. Funny that the sound stays with us even if the train is far away. Thank you for watching. See you around.